My name is Caley Africa. This is Heavy Chef, South Africa's biggest and fastest growing entrepreneur organization designed to stimulate positive change in this country from the ground up instead of waiting solely for a top-down approach. Now today we are talking to 3 founders, and these founders are from the iconic shoewear brand called Veldskoen. Veldskoen embodies the motto of act locally but think globally. In 2.5 short years, the brand has expanded to 3 markets across the globe, that's UK, US and Europe, and has been worn by none other than Ashton Kutcher and Prince Harry, and in actual fact has been invested in by both Cuban and Ashton Kutcher. Ladies and gentlemen, Veldskoen. Nick, Ross and Nick, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think I'm going to go straight at, hit people hot out the park and say investors in your company are Cuban and Ashton Kutcher. So to anyone watching that is definitely something that's going to grip you and keep you watching this interview.
That's the hook.
Now guys, Veldskoen's iconic South African shoe. Yeah. You're a storyteller. Can you take us back briefly to the story of Veldskoen's upon the African continent?
Sure. So the interesting thing, from a story perspective is, what we found in building out this brand is, and we talk about this a lot, is that everybody has their specific lens when they look at the shoe. We know the shoe as a farmer's shoe, but that's how we know it. People in Kenya know it very differently. People in Zimbabwe know it very differently. It's a famous African shoe. And even locally, everybody has their very specific lens that they look through it. And what we did and what we continue to do is we've taken this shoe that has this very specific lens, and we've reimagined it for a new age and for a new time and for a new economy, and made it for everyone. And that's what really excites us about it, and not just locally but globally. And that's really our driving force behind building this brand, and that's what led us to build what we want to be the South Africa's most recognizable brand globally.
And you guys are definitely playing in the traditional meets contemporary, right? And I see South African brands that are playing in the similar arena are also gaining a lot of traction abroad. I look at someone like Makosa, who's also looking at a traditional art form and has changed it into a contemporary medium, and it's really making waves.
100%. I think you really do need to understand, again, I use the word lens, you really need to understand the new lens and the new way in which people look at brands, and a lot of it, fortunately or unfortunately, is through social media and Instagram, and that's changed everything, and that's really leveled the playing field. So, anybody can create something and take it global, and it's also something that's been around for a long time, and reimagine it for a new life.
Now, we were talking before we were rolling about made in China versus made in South Africa in light of the AGOA law, and you gave me a very interesting insight, because I think a lot of people say, well, how are you going to compete price-wise? Can you delve into what you told me just before we started rolling?
Sure. In Veldskoen as a category, you've got an option of making shoes in South Africa, which is a little bit more difficult and a little bit more expensive. I'm of the mindset, though, that making stuff in South Africa in the long term may even have a cost benefit, because you don't have to rely on traveling all the way to another country. You're closer to your manufacturer, and there's a real relationship, especially with a handmade product like ours, where you want to be able to be close to your manufacturer. So it's nice to be able to get onto a plane and rock up in Durban, as opposed to get onto a plane and have to arrive in China. But the interesting thing about pricing is, of course, in South Africa, the China manufacturing option, there's a price benefit. But because of AGOA, we can export in a duty-free sort of environment, and we can net it out landing, for example, in the States, and the shoe, even though there's a margin benefit by making them in China, we net out at pretty much the same place, landing them after exports, and that's a really critical. It's a really good thing about our business, is that if you act globally, because of relationships like AGOA, we are still price competitive. But I think the greatest benefit is we want to make stuff in South Africa, and it's not just based on price, it's based on trying to grow manufacturing in South Africa, and those relationships are critical. And like I say, with Ross or myself or Nick, we can hop on a plane any day, go to Durban and meet with our manufacturer, and that's a massive benefit to our business.
Sure, I'm going to stop you there. For people that don't know what AGOA is, can you just give us a basic rundown?
Well, AGOA is a global trade relationship that Africa holds between a whole bunch of countries in the world, America and Europe and all the rest of it, which zero rates exports into those territories on specific good categories. So leather goods falls into that category, and we don't have an import on the other side, and we don't have an export on this side duty. So it's a very beneficial agreement, and we hope it stays in place for a long time.
And when you guys started the business, were you aware of this agreement?
No, when we started the business, we didn't know how to make shoes. I'm an old hotel guy, Ross is a builder, Nick's from digital, and we had absolutely no idea. What we did know is that South Africans loved Veldskoen. It's a 100-year-old concept. You know, there's been a whole lot of businesses that have sold a shoe called a Veldskoen, and what we knew is that there was an enormous amount of brand equity and love in that brand.
Existing, right?
Existing, exactly. And that if we could position it in a way, we had a shot at capturing the imaginations of South Africa, and that is what we focused on. We started off with as an absolute bootstrap, and when Rossi and I built the first e-commerce site, because we had no idea how to do any of this stuff, so we learned how to build an e-commerce site, we learned how to do digital ad spend, we had to learn absolutely everything.
And this was 2 years back?
2 years ago,
Okay,
2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was just after the 1990.
It was just after the
2016 Olympics.
Olympics, yeah. And how the concept came about is that we both noticed how bad the South African team looked at the Olympics, and the trigger was, what could they have been wearing that is South African? You know, the Americans have their deck shoes and their bashes. What could we have worn? And the idea was Veldskoen. But just to talk about expectation management and dreams, our initial target for Veldskoen in the first 6 months was to sell 3 pairs of shoes a day.
Yeah.
And that was what we set out to do. And I think it's one of the hardest things in businesses, and especially entrepreneurial journeys, is that it's so hard to get from 0 to 1 and get that stranger validation. So we set our target at 2 to 3 pairs a day, and you got that. Then you build out and you build out, and then you start worrying about AGOA a little bit later.
Sure.
But what we had to do first is to make sure that we could actually sell shoes. And so it's that concept of owning the egg farm versus learning how to sell 6 eggs. We try to sell eggs first.
Got it. And I mean, how do you approach, or how did you find people to make the shoes? Was there an existing factory that you partnered with, a product designer?
No, so we actually didn't have a product designer. What we had was we had the internet, and we scoured the internet for different shapes and forms. We didn't have a manufacturer. We approached, I'd say, probably about 10 different manufacturers in South Africa at that time, and not one was willing to actually help us out. You know, we wanted to start with a minimum quantity.
Yeah.
A lot of them said, listen, if you want a shoe, you have to take it in that color, and you have to order 1,000 of them. Yeah. But we saw way down, and we finally found a manufacturer locally, luckily in Cape Town, that we picked, that was willing to help us out with 200 shoes. So,
and Ross learned how to Photoshop. So he learned how to Photoshop, and we stumbled upon what we liked.
Yes.
And then took that conversation.
You photoshopped a prototype that you took to them and said, can you please make this exact shoe?
Well, we said this is what we want to do, and we started developing the shoe as we went. So the first shoes were the stock standard Veldskoen, and then we took it and we said, well, yeah, we want to change this. Can we change that? Can we add that? And we went through most probably about 10 different sort of products before we got onto the shape and size that we liked and the colors that we liked. And then it was a matter of placing the order and going from there. So our first run was only I think 200 shoes.
200 shoes.
That we started.
Yeah.
And then after that 200 shoes, I think we sold them quite quickly. I think we sold them.
And just off samples, we built the site. We learned how to build a site. We didn't have the benefit of integrating fulfillment, so it was like handwritten labels at Postnet. And I mean, it was ridiculous. We were selling quite a few shoes already, and writing out labels was long. And like I alluded to it earlier, we're a family business and we've got great photographs. My wife was heavily pregnant at the time, sitting at Postnet here at the waterfront and handwriting labels for like 4 hours. So they used to put furniture down for her. And Ross's family, just everybody got stuck in because all of a sudden it had captured people's imagination and it had looked different.
So the inflection point was at the start. I mean, you guys didn't really have to wait long until you saw a lot of those orders coming in.
Well, we were lucky in the initial order. We actually had one person coming in and taking a look at it and taking the majority of our stock. So we were very fortunate and blessed. But then the work started to come in. And at that stage we obviously were trying to market and trying to find out what to do, and hence we approached our friend Nic Latouf. He was from the digital game. We were trying to find our feet, and obviously something at every block. And we started, obviously we approached Nic, and I think Nic can tell the story.
Yeah, just so everyone understands, is we all went to school together. Yeah. So in Pretoria. And I had just arrived in Cape Town with my family from Joburg. I had a digital agency in Joburg, and arrived in Cape Town, and I'd started something small here. When Ross pinged me on LinkedIn and said to me he's got something to show me, and I gave him a call and I said, okay, cool, just sounds interesting. And I said, just WhatsApp me a picture of this shoe that you're talking about. Now, I mean, I'm come from a very liberal English background, and the last thing I ever want to wear is a Veldskoen. And again, going back to the lens that we were talking about earlier, is, that was my lens. And when I saw the shoe, I immediately thought opposite, and I was so interested in that feeling that I felt when I saw the shoe, and how it was something so different, but yet I still felt so connected to, that I was very, very, very interested. And I'll let Nic take it from here. When I said to them, like, let's meet up and let's have a chat.
So the backstory is every single person that we'd shown, so we had to kind of keep it a secret for a little bit, because everyone laughed at us. The concept of the notion that we could start a footwear business was as mad as it could be an ex-hotelier builder. Yes. The notion that we knew nothing about fashion was laughable at this time. And so we'd do this after hours. We'd be working at 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night on Skype, sharing screens and stuff. And everybody that we'd spoken to pretty much laughed at us. And then the first guy that didn't laugh, that actually thought that there was something in there, was Nic Latouf. And after our initial meeting, I remember walking out with Ross, and we were saying, oh God, we can't retain him because we've got no money. And but he's definitely bought into it, so why don't we make him a shareholder? So Ross says, let's go back in and talk to him. I said, no, geez, like, we can't be that keen. You got to give it like a... So we gave it about 30 minutes and phoned him and said, listen, we think we're going to need help on this. Yeah. And if you really believe in it, then we'd much rather get this done early. And so we shook hands and we became business partners. And then Nic, the wealth of information and technology and skill that Nic brought in the digital advertising space was amazing. And then, of course, Nic has a very creative brain and a storytelling brain, having a background in many things, including some movie making. That really helped us refine our story. And the three of us had to, once we'd settled on the fact that we wanted to create a shoe for all South Africans, yes, and something that represented South Africa proudly, not just for people in South Africa, but for people visiting South Africa. Once we'd got down to that essence of the story, then Nic took over and made sure that our content was reflective of that. And then very quickly, because he managed to get it out in such an effective way, our consumers, our buyers, started to drive that narrative for us. Yes. And that's become an integral part of our business.
How key is storytelling to brands that are being developed in Africa? I think my question is actually, how much of a unique selling proposition in the global arena is storytelling?
It's huge, and I mean, something we talk about often is that we're a media company first and we're a shoe company second, and that's really our DNA. So what we're doing now and how we're telling our story now, that's a big part of our success. So it's all about how you tell the story, but it's also really important to have a product that allows you to tell a good story. I don't think the idea of storytelling applies to everything, you know, and I think that's where people get it wrong. You know, from the very beginning, you know, Nick and Ross had a really interesting story and a really interesting product that they had reimagined, that it really was easy to tell that story and connect it with the right people.
Tell me about bringing Ashton Kutcher and your American investor on board. How did this happen? It's a distant dream for many people that are playing in this artisanal goods space in South Africa. You guys have made it happen.
Sure. If I could just jump in there and maybe rewind just a little bit, because we also have a very interesting investor in South Africa that was also the start of a lot of the investment side of the business. That I think Nick will.
Yeah. Well, firstly, we weren't for sale. There's three of us sitting in a Woodstock office, 3x3 meter office, and we're building out a little business.
And this was still part-time at the time?
Yeah, this time was part-time. And the next thing, we got a phone call from a company called Long for Life, which is Brian Joffe's listed entity on the JSE. And Brian Joffe, the legendary deal maker of Bidvest. And they came to see us, and it was a mind-blowing experience to just be, for anyone to be interested in us. So we, of course, entertained it. And they came and spoke to us, and they're building an incredible lifestyle company there, and they'd taken on board some really interesting businesses, the Sorbet Group, Sportsman's Warehouse, Outdoor Warehouse. And when we were initially considering an investment with them, the value proposition was really important to us. So not just business acumen and the ability to get us into the next phase of the business, but it was very much relationship based. Could they open doors in terms of revenue? In revenue and retail? And the answer to all of those questions was yes. And we then decided that we were going to take on board Long for Life as an investor. And it was, I mean, it's a David and Goliath type investment, right? So we're this tiny little business, and this is Long for Life, and they're listed on the JSE. But we decided that it was we liked them, and they came on board and then offered us enormous wealth of experience in terms of business reporting and business structure. And very quickly, we built a solid base of which to launch into the rest of the world. At that stage, we were already selling in England, so we'd launched our e-commerce store in the UK, and it was doing relatively well.
So you have a separate e-commerce store in the UK?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So we own our Veldskoen Pty Limited business, Veldskoen Limited business in the UK, and at that stage, we're trading in the UK, which is great, and it's kind of getting legs and it's moving. But of course, the big place you want to be is in America. And we knew that, like, if we could get our story told, this was a great opportunity. We were also very aware of a couple of other e-commerce footwear businesses, one of them being Allbirds, who had done incredibly well, and they told a fascinating story about making sneakers out of wool, out of merino wool. And we were so motivated to try to get something done in America. We knew we could do it from an e-commerce perspective, but like from a fulfillment perspective and from a partnership perspective, there was so many moving parts. It's a huge animal to get right. Yeah, and so we're sitting in our boardroom trying to unpack this thing, and we dropped a mail. We'd finished for the day, and I remember wrapping up. And this is an incredibly strange thing about our business. And the guys, I'm sure, will attest to this. Everything happens at the most opportune times, and it feels we're a blessed business. It feels as if we've got help. We've got help from somewhere else. 100%. And we finished the meeting, and the email comes from a guy called Steve Watts, and it says, "Hey Nick, I love your product. I'm a South African. I've got a company called Slide Handboards, and I'd love to talk to you about doing business in America." And I was like, okay. And I'm not a big fan of like big email conversations, so I picked up the phone, and I actually woke up his wife, Angela, who was in San Clemente. It was like 2 a.m, and she goes, "Nick, just phone Steve. He's actually in Durban." So I phoned Steve. I said to him, "Steve, where are you?" Just Durban. I said, "Rossi and I are coming for lunch tomorrow." Our manufacturer was there, so it's not too extravagant. We had to go and see our manufacturer. And so we meet with him, and it turns out that he had taken investment on the show Shark Tank with Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher. And I mean, that was a million miles away. It just so happened that he had done that. But what we liked about Steve is that he had built an unbelievably successful e-commerce business in a niche industry, surfing. So he had a handboard, surfboard. So he built a great business inside a niche industry, inside a niche product, inside a seasonal product, and he'd done really well in America.
Yes.
And we knew that we'd need that type of expertise if we were going to put out a totally unknown footwear brand in the States. So Nick and I hopped on a plane to San Clemente, and we spent time with them and got to know their family, which is incredibly important to us. And we just really liked their energy. You know, like husband and wife team, doing so well, really smart on Amazon, and we decided that we were going to do a partnership with them. A week or two passed, and they had to disclose that they were going to do Veldskoen with us. And then we got this incredible feedback that Mark and Ashton had looked at it and they'd loved it, and they'd said, would there be a possibility of us not just incorporating Steve and Angela, but rather with them? And of course, their value proposition is very unique. This is the stuff of dreams, right? I mean, you've got a baked-in two high-profile guys, but not only that, Mark Cuban has got really strong interests in retail and has got great connections, and we knew that it would push the business forward tremendously, and then we set out to do that. When we've got more time, we'll talk to you about the epic process of getting a legal entity registered in the US, and that is for another discussion, but I can tell you that it did take some doing. Trying to get our company, Veldskoen Pty Limited, to be bound in a new business in America called Caley Africa. That's our company in the States. That proved to be really, really challenging, and it's not that easy just to go and do business in America. But 6 months down the line, we managed to get it done, and I'm happy to report that business is growing. We've of course got Ashton wearing the shoes, and we're waiting for a little bit more scale, and then they'll get behind it in a very meaningful way.
So you've not only got Ashton wearing the shoes, but you've also got Prince Harry wearing your shoes. I mean, tell me about that. What did it impact the sales?
It was crazy. So I was in London, and I was busy working on our UK business there, and Nick had received an email from the editor of the Times in London, and my phone rings. He just told me that this guy had mailed, and he phones me. He says, listen, we were at a party and we saw Prince Harry wearing your shoes, the Pinotage Veldskoen, which is like it's the most ridiculous phone call you can get.
I mean, your whole story has had ridiculous moments like this, right? I'm like, okay.
And I was like, thank you. And to be fair, I'd heard that it had been happening, and I said, look, we've heard that it's been happening. Do you have an image? I'm desperate for an image. And he said, no, that's why I'm phoning. I was hoping you had an image. Anyway, we spoke, and he said it was strong enough to run something, and he ran a small piece the first week in the Sunday Times, and about Veldskoen in general, did really well. Sales picked up, and then the next week he ran a thing in the men's fashion saying Prince Harry's a fan of Veldskoen, and our sales just started going by the minute. It was unbelievable, and it showed us a couple of things. A, the enormous power that royal brand attracts, and secondly, the power of print in the UK. If you think about the fact that it is a printed newspaper on a Sunday, not the world's biggest article, and the impact that newspaper had on our sales was unbelievable.
So it drove through to your e-commerce store sitting in the UK.
Pushed through like you won't believe.
And you saw it happening like instantaneously. That is fascinating.
It was, from the moment newspapers were delivered that morning, it just went mad.
So on Shopify, on your phone, you got the app, and every time there's a sale, you get there's a little ding dong that goes off. And I mean, and that happened for days on end, like literally every 3 to 5 minutes.
And were you guys ready to handle the supply?
Thankfully we were. We had enough shoes in England. Yeah, we did. By that stage, we'd built out a little bit. The impact of that investment from Long for Life meant that we could build out our inventory, not just in South Africa but in Europe, in England, and so we were pretty prepared, and it went really well. What was also interesting was that all of a sudden, within 2 or 3 days of it happening, we had a whole bunch of tourists, English tourists, arriving at our space in Pardon Island, which is not exactly tourist destination central, kind of like clamoring through the building, coming and knock, 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 hi, we hear Prince Harry's wearing your shoes, and where can we buy them? And we're e-commerce, so we have no idea really how to sell shoes out of hand. So we make it extremely difficult for our clients to find us, and somehow they did. And to be honest, we made it incredibly difficult for them to pay us directly. I mean, Ross has done a great job building a little retail space in Pond Island, and it's become kind of a destination. So it's kind of weird to find us, but it's become a talking point. So you got loads of tour guides and stuff going, I'll take you to Veldskoen. It's this weird place in Pond Island, and you go through this thing, and then you eventually rock up in our space where you're greeted with a bunch of creators, and any one of them goes, are you looking for Veldskoen? And they go, yeah, we are. It's just the strangest situation. But it's busy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take you to your business statistics now. How many people work for you? Where are you guys based? Where is your manufacturing capability?
So the headlines are 2.5 years we've been going since investment, 1 year and 3 months since the first Long for Life investment. We've grown from 3 employees in 2 and a bit years to we're now at 18 locally, and a couple in America and 1 or 2 in Europe, or in England. We manufacture all our shoes in Durban at a license. We've since also launched 2 new brands and products. One is a flip-flop brand called Plucky, and a girl shoe called Felly. Those are the business headlines. And we're based in Pond Island. Our creative engine and our head office is in Pond Island.
Look, just on the product side, I have to say, I mean, we manufacture with a company called Hopewell Footwear, and they are incredible. It's an incredible family-owned business, and they have been so supportive. And there's no way that we would have been here without them. I mean, they've been incredible to us. They've helped us and assisted us in every way. On
the product development, they've improved the leather. They've done so much work for us, and they've backed us. You know, when you start scaling. Sure. Everyone's taking a risk, right? Because you're taking bigger bets on inventory, and they've been a real partner. When you get to a certain level as a business, and we're now getting there, especially in retail, there's a couple of things you learn very quickly, is that you need to get your inventory management right, you need to get your cash flow right, and you need to get your manufacturing partners absolutely bang on and in line, and also just working together with you. We've been incredibly blessed that Ross's wife, who's incredibly talented, she's a very talented COO, Chief Operations Officer, and she comes from large logistics experience and planning experience. She's effectively taken over our day-to-day running of the inventory, forward planning, working with our retailers, and she's done so well to work closely with Mohammed, and she's transformed our business from a operational planning perspective, and that's definitely taken us to the next level now.
I mean, it's a full-time job now.
It's a full-time job, absolutely, for all of us. Yes, yeah, has been for a while.
I don't think you call it a job. That's the only thing. I mean, we love it. I think
we have a lot of fun. Yeah. We have a lot of fun, and you'll see when you come visit us. It's something special. Yeah. And I think you talk about crazy things happening in our business all the time. I mean, the crazy thing that happened this last week is we're the first outside fashion brand to make it into Woolworths. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this is crazy stuff.
It's mad, and it just keeps happening, and we love it. And you know, again, we often talk about it, and we think it's because we're really open and we love collaborating with people. And again, you'll see when you come to our space, we invite people all the time they can come work from there for free. There's desks available, and people do, and creators come work there, and photographers come work there, and little digital agencies come and work there, and we don't charge anybody. And the idea is just let's all talk and collaborate and bounce off each other and bring stuff to life. And tell stories. And
how important is the creative goods space to creating sustainable employment within South Africa? I mean, we're an entrepreneur organization, so this is really what we're interested in. You guys are you're a success story within the space. I want to know how or if you believe we can see more of this taking place.
That is, I tell you what, that might be the single most important thing that we're doing in Veldskoen today. Yes, we're making shoes. Yes, we're trying to grow a global brand, but we've got a set of principles, and what happened in Veldskoen has shown us that it's possible. Yeah. Okay, so what you need to understand is fundamentals in Veldskoen, and not just how we began, but what our goals and ambitions are. This is a total bootstrap business. So we realize how tough, for example, the funding conversation is, but we know that you can build it without it. Yeah. Through endeavor and through a little bit of hustle, you can get there, because people in South Africa are currently coming together to help each other in this space. Yeah. We've been helped. If you ask for help, you'll get help. And that's one of the things we try and do. We say to young entrepreneurs, we've just done it with a new guy with a sneaker business, come to us, we can help you because we know you need it. Now all of a sudden that's getting somewhere. So it's baked into us that we want to help people to do this because we know it's possible. Like, I'm going to keep banging on about it. I'm an old hotel guy. This is a builder. I mean, like, we have no experience in doing this, but we managed to get it done with very little to no funding. It just took a bit of endeavor, and then we got it in. But then the second piece, which is incredibly important, is we're trying to build out a global brand. And what that means is we're trying to send a message to South Africans that you can start businesses in South Africa, you can tell more interesting stories, and you can export them to the world, and folks in the world are desperate to hear it. You have to have a positive attitude about it, and it is possible. There's loads of organizations out there. You guys are a great facilitator for linking people to wonderful networks that can help us trade abroad. I learn from guys every single day about what the work Westgrow is doing, what the work the DTI is doing. There's stuff out there for everybody. You've just got to get down and do it. But the bottom line is that it's physically possible. So to your question, you say, do we believe it's doing? I think we've now got a responsibility not just to say that it's possible, but in fact to help people along the way. And the three of us are totally committed to doing that. I tell you, the impact in our little world in terms of employment and business generation has been fundamental. And if we can help one or two other guys start up, oh my word, it would be such a rewarding activity for us.
I mean, we think we also have in our culture. I mean, we encourage our employees to actually start their own businesses. And we've most probably got other 18. I'm not sure to say we've got most probably about 5 or 6 of them that have done exactly that.
And is it specifically within the creative goods space, or you're saying start any business?
Start any business.
Okay. But you guys are saying we're willing to help people that are in the creative goods space.
The key, I promise you, the key here is openness. And again, anybody watching this, that is key. And I think a lot of South Africans are very scared, very closed, very protective, and you can't be there. So that shift is going to need to happen. And that's something that I've actually learned from these guys. And I come from a very creative background, but Ross has always said, from day one, Nick, this is a shoe for everyone. And I'm like, but it can't be a shoe for everyone. When you say everyone, do you mean really everyone? It's like, Nick, it's for everyone, and it's that openness, and you really do need to be so open to any possibility and to working with anybody and getting the shoes onto anybody and collaborating with anybody, and that is the real secret to why you will be successful and why we're so successful.
I mean, I think to add on to that, I think that's why we have been successful, because we've collaborated with everyone. Yeah, we don't turn down meetings with anybody, and we get them all the time. And people often just want to message and just come and talk to us and show us what they're doing and just have a little brainstorming session, and we're always open to it. And the doors that has opened for us has just been immense. Yeah, it really has, and it's about time that South Africans actually start helping each other out.
Definitely.
And that's the way we engage. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm good. This is my final question for you guys. It was something that was playing on my mind when you were talking about the investors. Why were the investors attracted to you? What was their why?
I probably still don't know.
There was just something about you.
No, I think if you said it in the initial meeting, they told us in the initial meeting they weren't 100% sure what we were.
But then how did they find you? Was it?
No, through the shoes.
Okay.
You know what it is?
That did all the talking.
No, 100%. I think there's two things that play a part. One, I think investors are looking for people that are passionate and are willing to go the long road. Yeah. And that I think they felt our energy, and I think they realized that we were serious. They were serious because we'd made that leap by then. Remember, like, we were still part-time, but we were into this thing. And we had backed it ourselves. We'd got it from 0 to 1, and we'd got it to a place. And I think that's imperative. I mean, even now when we look at things to invest in, that's a huge piece. Great ideas are great ideas, but the tenacity to get a stranger to buy your product, is that stranger validation moment, that takes some doing. So I think that was the first piece, and then the second piece, I think that what they liked, and you're welcome to get them on your show sometime and ask them, but I think it was the simplicity of it. Yeah. I'll say this, my funding proposal was 2 pages, and the first page had the logo on it. Yeah. But what it wasn't comically simple. It was simple, but it was articulate, and it set out a goal for a period of time, you can call it what you want, a runway, or, there's a way of looking, many ways to articulate that, but it was simple. We needed some funding for inventory. We needed some funding for marketing. We needed to scale up the business in terms of resource, and then we needed some future access to capital. And if you added those 4 things together, you got a time frame in which we had a success window and we had a cash flow that was built for that. And if you added them up, it all came to a total, and then all the value proposition and all of that stuff had to come together. And I think they appreciated the fact that we knew what we wanted.
Yes.
I think a lot of folks, when they attack this investment conversation, they go, if I get this, then I'll do this, and if I get this, then I'll do that. I think our conversation was, this is what we need, and that's where we're going.
Got it.
And that was, I think it had a lot to do with it. Don't for one second think that was enough to secure the investment. The due diligence and all the rest of it had to be done, and that then takes real work. Sure. But to address your initial question, why did they invest in Veldskoen? I think it had a little bit to do with the 3 guys, because we were passionate and we'd already done something. And then the second piece was that I think our simplicity in our ambitions was pretty clear.
Got it. Before we close, I have to touch on DORP, D-O-R-P. Yeah. It's called an incubator of sorts. Yeah. So you guys are looking at creative goods brands, you're bringing them into the system, and you're going to try and help them scale globally, using the networks that you currently
have. And we have a little rule book. We play in products where there's enough margin. We start really small, and if we like them and they do well, we scale them out. If they don't do well, then we try and get out early. But we take our time, because it's very difficult to get these things going properly. It's very easy to get distracted, and there's 1,000 good ideas out there, but there's only a handful of good businesses, and so Veldskoen is a huge focus of ours now. So is fairly our girl shoe, and we've moved into a period now, Nick alluded to it now, where we're taking on board real retail relationships, and it's in that phase of the business that you have to really learn, because dealing with retail and dealing with online are 2 different animals, and business maturity becomes critical, and sure. Making sure that you're ready for it.
And if people, are liking what they're hearing, they think they could benefit from meeting with you guys, you think that you may be benefiting, how do they get in touch with you?
Veldskoen.shoes. Just get us up on the web, Veldskoen.shoes or Africa.
DM us on Instagram.
DM us, a lot of the stuff is on LinkedIn and Instagram. They must just message us, and we are always so happy to talk to people that want to try to do stuff. And as the guys have said, and I've said, happy to help, because right now, we need to all get stuck in.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great pleasure.
I don't usually have 3 people, so thank you guys. And that, ladies and gentlemen, were the 3 founders of the iconic South African shoewear brand Veldskoen. And you heard it from them. If you are a player in the creative goods space that believes you would benefit from their mentorship, then do go and check them out. That's at dorp.africa and also at Veldskoen. They're very approachable. They're all about building a family, and they are willing to give knowledge back into the community. So please do make friends and learn, and let's grow this economy together. If you would like to hear about up-and-coming Heavy Chef events and masterclasses, then of course you can check out www.heavychef.com, the platform for people that do. And that is me, Caley Africa, yet again signing out of the Heavy Chef interview chair. Enkosi kakhulu, hamba kahle.